Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It's Palestine here. Welcome to my channel. It's Wednesday. I'm off all week long or I'm off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'm normally off on Friday anyway. So I'm off all week long because I took the week off to help my boyfriend paint his kitchen because he was sort of like told by the landlord that he had to do it. And it was not something that my boyfriend could do on his own. If he did it on his own, he definitely would still be doing it today. So I took the week off. I didn't know how long it was going to take to do it, but I took the week off to help him paint his kitchen. And so on Monday, my boyfriend, my seat friend, and myself, we went over to his apartment and we painted all the walls. And we painted them magnolia. And then so my seat friend was saying that he was hungry and he was thirsty and he was tired. So since we'd painted everything except the ceiling, then I thought it would be a good idea if we stop and we go get something to eat and drink. And then so that was on Monday. 3 people were helping on Monday. And then for the number of hours, we calculated for the number of hours that all 3 of us worked to pay minimum wage, it would be 120 pounds just for minimum wage. That's not for a skilled decorator, just for minimum wage. And that was 120 pounds. We'll say 13. We'll say we worked for like maybe 3 hours. We worked from like maybe 10 to 1, 3 hours. So 3 times 3 is 9. So that was 9 hours total. And we'll say minimum wage is, it's not quite 13, but we'll say 13 pounds an hour. And then so 10 times 9 is 90. And 3 times 9 is 27. So 90 plus 27 is 117. So we'll round that up to 120 pounds. And then on yesterday was Tuesday, my boyfriend and I went and worked on the ceiling. My seat friend didn't want to come. He said that he had things to do. I think he thought that since he helped one day, that was quite enough. And he got a free lunch. He didn't get paid for it, but he did get a free lunch. My boyfriend paid for lunch for him and me. And so we worked 2 hours. So 2 times 2 is 4 times 13. So that's 52. So we'll say 120 plus 52 is 172 pounds. So we're saying that the landlord, they got a room painted for free that would have cost totally unskilled people 172 pounds. If she'd paid for professional decorators, it would have cost a lot more than that. And then the letting agent is going to reimburse my boyfriend the cost of the supplies that he bought to paint the room. And it's just a miracle that we did it. And then my boyfriend found this big long pole, and he was able to put the paint roller handle on that pole, and he was able to paint the ceiling. So it's just a miracle. It's just a miracle that 3 people, well, 2.5 people were able to paint a room in 5 hours, 3 hours on Monday and 2 hours on Tuesday. But we did it. But I suspect the landlord is going to complain because she wanted the ceiling to be white, but we couldn't do the ceiling in white. And the reason why is because the white paint was really old and ruined. So we had to throw the white paint out, and so we had to paint the ceiling magnolia. So I suspect she's going to complain about that. But hey, to get like 175 pounds worth of work for nothing, she shouldn't be complaining. should be grateful. And so that's what we did yesterday. And then I'm sure that if you saw my video yesterday, I talked about it a little bit more. And then so I woke up this morning and my Sikh friend has gone to Southampton. So that means since he's gone to Southampton, I've had a little bit of time to do the things that I wanted to do. And one of the things that I wanted to do was enter a cackle competition, because I enter a cackle competition every month for my data science channel. And I enter the competition, I make a video on it on my data science channel, and then I make a blog post. So because my dyslexic friend, I personally think that there's more things wrong with him than just dyslexia. I think at the very least, he's got ADHD, and he also needs a lot of attention. And so basically, I was able to enter the cackle competition this morning. He phoned me up at about 7 and woke me up. And then I thought, well, excuse me. I thought, well, I'm up. I may as well get up and do this competition. So it is close to 11. So we'll say that I've been working on this cackle competition from 8 to 11, definitely 3 hours. I've definitely been working on the cackle competition for 3 hours, and I finished it on the first attempt, and I did an okay job on the first attempt. It's not really worth it for me to enter the cackle competitions where you get a prize, a monetary prize, because you have to go to America to actually collect your prize. And as I've said, if you've watched my videos in the past, my passport is out of date, and because I still haven't got a new passport, and because my passport is out of date, it's not really worth me entering competitions that have monetary prizes. But they have a playground competition that I enter every month, and then maybe at some point I might start entering other competitions just to enhance my skill set. But I've got so many other things to work on as well. Like, I'm also working on R programming, because if you want to be a data scientist, you need to know Python and R, because data scientists program in Python and R. And so you need to know both of those languages. And so at the moment, I'm working on R programming and statistics in R programming. And that's on my data science channel called Crystal X. If you're interested in data science, you can look at all my videos on data science. And another thing that I was doing this morning was I was watching this lady on YouTube, because I do watch a lot of YouTube videos. And that's one thing about my dyslexic friend, because he needs so much attention that he doesn't allow me to watch YouTube videos. So I was really happy that I had an opportunity to watch YouTube videos this morning. And my boyfriend doesn't need a lot of attention, so I can sit there and watch videos around him, and he doesn't care. You know, he does his own thing. So that's one area where my boyfriend and I get along, because he can sit there, do his own thing, and I can sit there and do my own thing. Because both of us don't need a lot of attention. We're able to keep ourselves occupied. We're able to entertain ourselves. But my dyslexic friend, he cannot entertain himself, and so he needs a lot of attention. But I have found some things that he can do, like he is able to watch a movie. So he can sit in my kitchen and watch a YouTube video that's a movie. He's able to take a nap. He can, like when I'm out of my apartment, he's able to lay on my bed and take a nap on my bed. But he does complain about the light, but that's just something he's going to have to get used to. And then he's able to watch EastEnders on his phone, and he's able to play some game on his phone. But other than that, he needs to have lots of attention. And so it's hard for me to work on a cackle competition or do a YouTube video or read or anything because he needs so much attention. So that's a bit problematic. But anyway, back to this YouTube video I was watching. I was watching this lady right here. And she is, oh, hold on a second. When I was showing it to you, I messed it up. She is employee rights attorney, all things work, and she's talking about work-related matters. And so basically, I was just watching her videos because I thought it would be interesting to find out what she has to say. And although she's based in America, she's talking about American laws. It's still nice to know what she says because some of these American laws can transfer over to English laws as well. And she made some videos that I was watching yesterday about blacklisting and retaliation. And so I thought, well, yeah, I'm really familiar with that. And I thought I would like to make a video on blacklisting and retaliation. And I thought about it, and then I thought, well, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to talk about blacklisting and retaliation because I've been blacklisted and I've been retaliated against. And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm just going to talk about it in this video in very vague terms. And the reason why I'm going to talk about it in this video in very vague terms is because obviously I still have to work, and I'm going to have to work for the rest of my life as long as I can. And so if I say everything that happened, then like maybe a future employer or a future colleague might watch the video and might be able to identify me, and it probably would cause me problems at work in any employment and future employment. So I thought rather than say everything that happened, which was really awful, I'm just going to talk about it in really vague terms just to give you a general idea of what I went through without going through the specifics. So basically, I was working for this company called Foster Wheeler, and I got there in 2006, I believe. And I worked in the department I was in was invoice audit, but that was just a temporary position because they were going to be outsourcing the work to India. So I was over there auditing the invoices until they outsourced the work to India. And then but of course they never told anybody they were going to outsource the work to India, because if people knew that their job was going to be outsourced to India, they wouldn't want to stay there. They would want to find another job that had better prospects. So I had heard that the work was being outsourced to India, and I asked the manager about it. And of course he lied and said he didn't know anything about it. But of course he knew everything about it. So the work that I was doing was being outsourced to India, and that's why I wasn't taken on permanently. So I got another job in the proposals and estimating department, and I got the job, and I was the affiliate coordinator. Well, I had problems in that job because there was already another lady doing that job, and they were replacing her, and she knew that she was going to be replaced, so she just decided not to train me. And then because she didn't train me, they extended my probationary period, and I still didn't get any training. I had to do it on myself. And then so since she was friendly with the other girls in the department didn't like me because I had been hired to take over her role. And so they blamed me, but I was not the person that they should be blaming, because it was the managers who made the decision that she wasn't able to do the job. And then so already I got off to a bad start in that department because I was supposed to replace the lady that was already doing the job, and they hadn't gotten rid of her. And she didn't train me, and so she didn't train me at all, and I had to learn how to do it all on my own. And so I passed my probationary period, and then also I did the job, and then also they decided that they were going to take my position, which was the affiliate coordinator position, and they were going to put it into the finance department instead of proposals and estimating. And then so my manager didn't like me. So again, he didn't tell me that they were planning on taking my job and moving it over to proposals and moving it over to finance. So that meant when this position was going to be moved to finance, that meant that I would not have had a job. I would have lost my job, which was what the manager was planning all along, because he didn't like me. And while all this was going on, I had met this man at the bus stop, and he was Algerian, and he was a mechanical engineer, and a senior mechanical engineer. And then basically I'd lost a lot of weight, so I was looking, well, better than I am now anyway. And so he got my number off me, and then he started phoning me and following me and everything like that. And I was scared. I didn't know how to handle that because, nobody ever paid any attention to me because I've had a weight problem ever since I've lived in the UK, just from the stress of living in the UK. So I wasn't accustomed to people being interested in me. Normally in a relationship, I had to do all the work. And then, so basically, I complained to Human Resources because I didn't know what to do. And then what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a complaint to the police because this guy was scaring me. And when I said I wanted to make a complaint to the police, then Foster Wheeler got involved because this guy worked for a client. And the client was Qatar Petroleum, if you want to know. And the project was QPCC. I think it was QPCC. And so basically I got called into the office and they asked me not to phone the police. They said that they were going to take care of it. Well, so basically what happened was my career at Foster Wheeler was pretty much over. And I knew it. I knew that because I wanted to phone the police because of what this guy was doing and he was scaring me. I knew my career was finished. And basically, that's what happened. I got blacklisted. And then what happened was I withdrew my complaint. And that's another thing. Because I withdrew my complaint, then they just said, my career in Foster Wheeler was finished because of this guy. This man, because he was phoning me and following me and scaring me. And I wasn't used to that. I'm not used to men paying attention to me. And so yeah, I got blacklisted. So if I applied for any positions, I was just completely ignored. I think I did apply for a position one time, and I think I got an interview, but I never heard anything after the interview. They never even had the courtesy to tell me that I didn't get the job. And so, basically, I got blacklisted. Because of the behavior of this man. And then actually what happened was he moved right across the street from my road, and afterwards, and I knew my career at Foster Wheeler was over, but he moved right across the street, and he was at the bus stop waiting for me, and then I got scared, and then, so basically, I didn't want to have any more problems at work, so I agreed to go out with him, and just to make a long story short, he was Algerian. He was not a Christian. You can come to your own conclusions about what religion he is, but he's not a Christian. And I will say that his religion allows him to have 4 wives. That's one thing I will say. And so, to make a long story short, this guy had an addiction. And so he was abusing me relentlessly because of his addiction. And then basically, he caused me. So basically what happened was, praise the Lord, thank God, they deported him. They made him leave the UK. So he had to leave the UK to go to Qatar to work for Qatar Petroleum, because what had happened was QPCC fell out with Foster Wheeler, and so they stopped the contract. So because they stopped the contract, he had to go back to Qatar, and he was working in Doha, Qatar. And it's a good thing that he did have to leave the country, because his addiction was so bad and he was abusing me that he would have killed me, basically. And so basically he caused me, and I can't say in this video the things that he was doing, but he caused me to have an operation. He caused me to have 1 medical procedure and 1 operation. And so, unfortunately, because I don't want anybody to make a complaint about this video, and so I can't be really graphic, but it was abuse, and he caused me to have 1 medical procedure, and he caused me to have an operation, and it wasn't very nice. And so I got blacklisted from what this guy did, like following me around. And so I didn't want any more problems at work. So I agreed to go out with him. And then he was abusing me and put me in the hospital. So that went on. So I continued to work as an affiliate coordinator, but I had no career prospects, no job prospects. They had already obviously put in a note on my file not to give me any more work. And so, I have a Master of Science in Finance, so I was more than capable of being a cost engineer. I also have NVQ level 4, a diploma in accountancy. So I was more than capable of being a cost engineer, but they wouldn't do it. And then, so basically, although I didn't know it at the time, I was going out with this Iranian guy, and I know now that he's mentally ill. I knew then he was mentally ill, but and he was part of a group, and Foster Wheeler was operating a gang stalking ring within that company. And so basically, when there was somebody that they wanted to get rid of, then they would target that individual. And this gang stalking ring would target that individual. And because I was single, I didn't have any dependents, and I was vulnerable, I was one of the people who was targeted in this company. And I do feel that their motivation to get rid of me was financial. And the reason why is because they had my signature. And they could forge documents on me. And also, I was supposed to get, if anything happened to me, my beneficiary would have gotten, I think, 3.5 or 4 times my base salary. So there was a financial motivation for Foster Wheeler to get rid of me because I didn't have any dependents. So they could have kept that money. If anything happened to me, they could have kept that money. And also, I was affiliate coordinator. I was the only person in the company doing that job. I do feel that they took insurance policies out on me, but because I was the victim, I was not an insider. I was an outsider. I don't know exactly what they did, but I do feel it was financially motivated because I know that there's a lot of sick people in Foster Wheeler who were quite happy to be a part of this gang stalking ring for free because they're such sick people. But I think that the management of Foster Wheeler was doing that financially. I think that there was a financial gain to get rid of me. And they contacted my friends and my family, and they contacted people who I knew years ago, and they came back into my life and dumped me, coming back into my life and then dumped me. And it was a terrible environment. And so I was single, but I couldn't go dating because every date I went in on was just appalling. And these people that I dated were absolutely appalling. And if I joined a dating website, well, they knew what dating website that I was on because they had a big IT department. And so they would give me fake profiles, fake dates, catfishing. So they knew, because they had a big IT department, they knew what sites I was going on. And they had the capability to bug my phone. They had the capability to clone my phone. They could do anything they wanted because they had an IT department to do it. And I was just a little person, a little vulnerable person on the outside. But I knew that they were monitoring my work phone and probably most definitely my mobile phone, because every time the phone rang, they would get up and run to the office and listen to the phone call. And so finally I made a complaint, and basically they were going to get rid of me anyway. But when I made a complaint, that was their excuse to retaliate against me. So in this one company, Foster Wheeler, I was blacklisted, and then I was retaliated against. And so I applied for jobs, and of course I didn't get anywhere in the jobs that I applied for, because that was not their intention. Their intention was to get rid of me, and I do believe their intention was to harm me, and I believe it was financially motivated. They had my signature, so they could have faked any insurance policies they wanted on me. And because I was the only person in the company to do this job, was affiliate coordinator, they could have taken out a key man insurance policy on me. And I did look it up on the internet, and it says it's quite common that employers will make money off of employees by taking insurance policies out on them. And I believe that that was one of the things that was done. And I believe that the employees of Foster Wheeler, although they weren't getting anything out of it other than their paycheck, but they did it just because they're sick. And then so I made a complaint. They retaliated against me. I rang ACAS. I spoke to people at ACAS. And this is another thing that I believe. I believe that when I rang Kate, because they were monitoring my phone calls, it would have been nothing for them to divert a call. I believe that the people at ACAS that I believed I was speaking to, because they were so suave and spoke so well, I believe they were actors, that it wasn't actually ACAS that I was speaking to. I believe it was actors. And of course, Foster Wheeler got rid of me. And then when Foster Wheeler got rid of me, I tried to ring ACAS again. The lady at ACAS, working at ACAS, or she said she was ACAS, but in hindsight, I think it was an actor. And so she never heard from me again, never replied, never returned my call, never heard from him again. As soon as Foster Wheeler got rid of me, I never heard from ACAS again. And so finally, I remember I was at home. I was all on my own, even my friends, because Foster Wheeler had contacted my friends and it said things about me. There was this woman, she was slightly older than me, and they contacted my friends, and they were saying things about me to my friends. And these friends took Foster Wheeler's side. So obviously, they're not my friends anymore. Foster Wheeler contacted my friends, my family. They got my family involved. They got my estranged family involved. And they sort of like, they went into my sister's email account, and they were sending emails from my sister's email account that weren't very nice, because my sister said that she didn't remember sending me any of the emails that they sent me. So they went into emails accounts of people I knew and sent me emails and messages from people. It was an appalling situation, and basically what they wanted is they wanted me not to be here anymore, and I think it was financially motivated. And then so when I made my complaint, so they started saying that I was mentally ill. So basically, they started saying that I was mentally ill because, of course, they were going to deny everything that they were doing. And they kept saying, go see your doctor. Well, of course, because they wanted to establish me being mentally ill. Well, I wasn't going to go to my doctor because I knew that I wasn't mentally ill. And then so basically, they got rid of me. And I thought that when they got rid of me, that the harassment would stop. But I was so traumatized. And I do think I have PTSD. And I definitely had PTSD then. I was so traumatized that after everything that they did, and obviously I can't say everything that they did, but basically when they got rid of me, they also had sent, in the process of the complaints procedure, they also had written me these really awful letters. Those letters are no longer in my possession because all I had was a tiny little apartment. And so when I was at work, they would come into my apartment and do all kinds of things into my apartment, like tear my clothes, rip my clothes, damage my property. But another thing they did was they went through, when I was working, they went into my apartment and they went through and read all of my correspondence. And they took these really nastily written letters that Foster Wheeler had given me, and they replaced them with more moderately worded letters. And the theme of it was, I was the problem. That was the theme. I was the problem. And telling me that I was mentally ill, which I knew that I wasn't mentally ill. I was being blacklisted and retaliated against. And if I did exhibit any mental illness, it was PTSD, nothing other than PTSD. And then so I left Foster Wheeler, but it still was going on. I was still very traumatized. You know, I was applying for jobs, but how could I get a job when I was left in such this terrible state? Because Foster Wheeler, they wanted rid of me. They wanted me gone. They wanted me not on this earth. And I believe that's because they had a financial incentive to do that. And they had their employees helping them. And my ex-boyfriend, this Iranian ex-boyfriend, is one of the people that was helping him, but helping Foster Wheeler. And so I wrote a letter to David Cameron, telling David Cameron what was going on. Well, I didn't know this, but David Cameron was friendly with Samir Biko, and Samir Biko was the CEO of AMEC. And basically, AMEC was in the process of purchasing Foster Wheeler. So obviously, and Samir Brico was friendly with David Cameron. He had been given some title about going out and getting business for the UK or something like that. He'd been given some position in the UK government where he was going out and getting business for the UK. So Samir Brico was buying Foster Wheeler, and then Samir Brico of AMEC was buying Foster Wheeler. So Foster Wheeler was becoming AMEC Foster Wheeler because the two companies were going to merge. And that was another reason why they wanted to get rid of me, why they didn't need me anymore, because Foster Wheeler was being sold to AMEC and they had no need of an affiliate coordinator because Foster Wheeler, well, it had originally been a U.S. company, but then they made it a Swiss company. But they had no more need of a Foster Wheeler. So they didn't need my position anymore. They didn't need me anymore. I was a vulnerable person with no dependents. So they decided they would get rid of me literally and make a little money in the process. So I didn't know that that David Cameron was friendly with Samir Brico. I didn't know that. So when I wrote David Cameron a letter, David Cameron had me sectioned because David Cameron was in on it. David Cameron was in on this scam. And they were trying to cover up the fact that Foster Wheeler was a very corrupt company. And it is. You can do a search on the internet and just say Foster Wheeler global corruption. And there's loads of articles that come up. And you can do a search on Operation Car Wash. You can do a search on Petrobras. And Foster Wheeler had to pay fines and reparations to people in Nigeria. They had to pay fines to America, to the SEC, that Security Exchange Commission. They had to pay fines to the SFO, which is the Serious Fraud Office. And if you do a search on the internet, you will find out all about Foster Wheeler's corrupt business practices. And basically what they were doing is they were buying contracts. They were employing third-party agents to bribe officials to buy contracts. And it's all on the internet. You can look it all up. But because David Cameron had me sectioned, they were trying to cover they were trying to cover it all up. They were trying to cover everything up that Foster Wheeler was doing. And then, so basically, so I got this diagnosis of a mental illness, and I was forcibly drugged. But it didn't stop. Even after that, it didn't stop, because Foster Wheeler was still part of AMEC Foster Wheeler. And then so they got other people involved. They got my neighbors involved. So I got sectioned a second time because they had gotten my neighbors involved. I believe you have to be so careful if you are a single person with no dependents. You have to be so careful who you get involved with, because there are a lot of very unscrupulous, damaged people who are going to look to make money off you, which is what happened to me. Because my neighbors, I live in a housing cooperative, they've got my signature. And so my neighbors were doing things. I was going to this church was doing things. I was working in a charity shop. This charity shop was doing things. And this one lady in the charity shop was asking me all kinds of personal questions. Yeah, of course she was. Yeah, of course she was. She wanted these people, if you're single and you don't have any dependents, you're just a walking target, and that's what was done to me. So basically, a lot of things were done to me by Foster Wheeler, but even after I was no longer in the company, Foster Wheeler, it still carried on. And the reason why is because Foster Wheeler was bought by AMAC, and then Foster Wheeler became AMAC Foster Wheeler. And then, but again, because Foster Wheeler was such a corrupt company, and AMAC had to take responsibility for Foster Wheeler's debts, that the board of directors from AMAC Foster Wheeler asked Samir Brico to leave because they had lost confidence in him, because he had made the decision. He had been the one spearheading buying Foster Wheeler. And then so AMAC Foster Wheeler was actually sold to Wood Group. And then Wood Group had to take on all the responsibility for Foster Wheeler's criminal activity. And then Wood Group went down the tubes. And now Wood Group was bought by a company called, I believe it was Sadara, and I think it was a UAE business. But even though Wood Group is now owned by Sadara, it got to retain its name. But it's now, from what I understand, it's now owned by Sadara, which is a group of companies. And it's a Middle Eastern company. But they got to keep their name, Wood Group. But it's actually a Middle Eastern company now. And so all of this was going on. And they didn't leave me alone. Even after I left Foster Wheeler, they didn't leave me alone. They were still harassing me, and they got other people involved in it as well. And other people may have been working with Foster Wheeler or on their own, because I'm just a single woman on my own with no dependents in the UK. So I was just a walking target. So basically, that is why I've been given a diagnosis of a mental illness by the UK government, because the UK government wants to cover up what Foster Wheeler did. And I got sectioned by David Cameron originally. So I think I've covered everything that I want to cover. I just wanted to talk about, in the most general terms, why I was blacklisted and retaliated against by my former employer, Foster Wheeler. And I believe that when I left Foster Wheeler, I believe it was financially motivated. I believed that they wanted to make sure that I was no longer here on this earth. And I believe that they were looking to make money out of it. But since I'm on the outside looking in, I wasn't an insider. So I don't know exactly what it is that they did. But they did make my life hell. They ruined my life. They ruined my reputation. And maybe someday, when I'm not having to work anymore, maybe I'll write about all the things that they did. Another thing that they did was I kept a record of all the things that they did. And they went into my apartment, and that record was like maybe 60 pages or something like that. And they went into my apartment, and they replaced that record with more moderately worded records, because obviously it was such a traumatic experience for me. I blocked it all out. The only reason why I'm alive today is because I blocked it all out. But they've gone into my apartment, and they've taken out my record, this record of everything they did, and they replaced it. It was originally like 60 pages, and they took out most of the stuff and made it like 15 or 20 pages, something like that. So I've blocked out most of what they did, and I know it's for my own mental safety to block it all out, because if I could remember everything they did, then it would be so traumatizing for me. I probably wouldn't be here today. So that concludes my video. Thank you so much for listening to my story about how I was blacklisted and retaliated against and used as a financial pawn in global corruption in the oil and gas industry. Thank you. Thank you for taking an interest in my life, as pathetic as it may be.